What causes people to do outrageous and egregious things in this world? We've talked about mass murdering before on the Rad and Norty show, but what about other things? Manipulation, bank robbing, all the things that make people do these crazy things that are just not deemed appropriate in society. That's what we're talking about tonight. I don't know. If you got thoughts on it, leave us a note in the chat. Why do people do what they do instead of just doing the right thing? If you got an idea, tell us in the chat. Scan the QR code up in the corner to support our veteran fundraiser, and we'll be right back to get into the whole show. And we're live. All right. Not a Dr. Norty. Welcome to the weekly show. How you doing? What's been on your mind in contemplation of thinking through the minds of criminals this week?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. In terms of the criminal activity world and what may or may not make somebody fall into that category, I've been thinking a lot about something that you sent me. I don't know, was it last week? Maybe over the weekend. It was a little short clip, but it just made me think differently. And it was somebody talking about what may exist in somebody's head or genetics that makes them predisposition to commit criminal activity. And they use the reference of when back in Viking times, if you're going on a Viking raid to loot and pillage a village, you can't have all these sound mind thinking people. You need somebody with a screw loose. You need that wild card that's going to take charge and storm in there and, probably do some unruly things. And that really, really got my brain turning around. Do those people still exist in society today? So that's what's been on my mind.
I think they definitely do. Interestingly, I was reading an article discussing the importance of like population control with these types of individuals. And they have this real maladaptive behavior where if there's a lot of them in society starts to push back on them. And actually they're sort of competing amongst themselves to be able to exist in society, since society's capacity to retain these sociopathic individuals is limited, right? So they're almost like competing for a limited number of spots to exist in society, which I thought was also an interesting perspective. But they do exist in society, albeit in small numbers. But then I guess maybe we should talk about what is an actual sociopath, right? We say that all the time, right? I mean, and I guess that is, kind of what we're talking about, but that's not everything, right? I mean, the topic of discussion for tonight is really what the brains and the minds of criminals, right? What are the things that motivate people to do things wrong? And then obviously the extreme of that is sociopathy, right? When people there's like this self-gratification that supersedes all other things that, drives them to do what they do. But, what about when you're not on that extreme, right? I mean, what are some of the things that come to mind when we think about like why people rob banks? Is it are they just desperate? Is there external pressures? I guess that's maybe one way to think about it. Is it external or is it internal in terms of primary motivations to commit crime?
And that's where I definitely feel like there's a sliding scale and where people fall on that, right? Like, I think there's always a product of circumstance when it comes to people committing crimes. I think there's a level of surrounding that plays a part in this. But going back to what I originally mentioned, and just, I feel like some of these people may just be almost predetermined to be criminals, right? Career criminals. And maybe it's not necessarily that they're destined to be criminals, but they've got that, I'm going to call it like a wild card factor, right? They have that wild card gene where something in them just wants to do something to the next level. And I was almost wondering, is it the same thing that exists in people that do extreme sports or are always looking for these thrill-seeking adventures? But you take that gene, that drive to do something that just gets the heart rate pumping, right? And then you apply that to somebody who maybe came out or grew up in an area or under a household where the laws of right and wrong didn't exist. And they just became very good at this thrill-seeking activity that is crime.
What about like true sociopaths where it's actually, there is no thrill seeking? It's like,
well, and I think that's different. And that's where
hunger,
where I think
satiation, but they're actually, characterized as being calm, cool, collected, under pressure. Like they don't get that rush from their activity, right? It's like total opposite, but there is, right? There's that thrill seeking.
Well, and that's why I think there's different.
Or as Sherry says, looking for the next high. Welcome to the show, Sherry. We're glad you're with us.
Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe tell us in the chat if you've ever committed a crime. Although I guess not if it's
as long as it doesn't fall under like the current statute of limitations for that crime. You don't have to get specific, just a yes or no.
Outside the statute of limitations, have you committed a crime, Josh?
I have not. No, I've always been a play it safe, analyze the risk. I'm not a crime guy.
Me? Nope. I'm a backline diver through and through. I was a kleptomaniac in middle school, man. Oh, I could steal.
Stealing packs of gum?
I mean, it was mostly like candy. I love stealing candy.
I always
the rush.
Well, I want to get back to the sociopath thing, but man, there was a buddy of mine's like, yeah, kids are stealing magic cards. And that's why they're all locked up. He's like, I should just go steal magic cards. Like, do you even play magic cards? Like, no. I'm like, who would steal? Like, why are people going and stealing these? Don't they have to save up their allowance and buy them? Why would anyone ever steal? And that's what went through my head. So that I was that kid. Never even crossed my mind.
Meanwhile, you got Steve over here ticketing the GMs for free items in game, just trying to steal from the video.
Criminal activity.
Steve is a true criminal. But no, I mean, I went through this brief phase when I was in middle school where it was like this light bulb went off and I was like, wait, I can just steal something and then I don't have to pay for it. Like the understanding of repercussions was totally outside my mind. There's a very brief period of life. But I remember I went on like a family vacation with, at the time, like my best friend's family. I mean, we were probably in 7th grade. Is down in Florida, and my mom sends me down there with some cash, thinking like, oh, I'll give the cash. I'm supposed to give the cash to my friend's mother to like pay for groceries and dinner and whatever. So I guess I thought it was. She thought it was like mostly spending money, so she was like, my friend's mom's like giving me, a couple bills here and there to like, go out and like spend it on this or that or whatever. And I didn't spend any of the money. I just kept it. And then I would just steal, like, I remember baby bottle pops, man. That was the thing. Baby bottle pops.
Baby bottle pops.
We would just roll up into a gas station and pocket a few baby bottle pops. And so this whole vacation, we're like, me and my buddy, we're like always sucking on a baby bottle pop. And his mom tells his older brother, who's his older brother is privy to the fact that we are stealing all these baby bottle
candy.
Pops.
Yeah.
But his mother says to his older brother, he's like, man, Ryan's mom sent him down here with spending money and he's just spending it all on baby bottle pops. And meanwhile, the older brother is like just thinking to himself, like, he ain't spending a cent on those baby bottle pops. Oh, the minds of a somewhat innocent middle school boy.
Yep, and I like that. That was your thought.
Say that's probably about the worst trouble I ever got into. I never really got into much more trouble than that.
If I steal stuff, I don't have to pay for it. Correct.
That is correct. The perfect logic of a 7th grader.
Yeah, I mean that checks out. That's good problem solving. Like, don't have money, take it.
Exactly. So that's my history as a criminal. You have no history as a criminal. So I guess we don't really have much of a crime background to go on.
Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the idea of robbing a bank seems awesome and fun until you realize you go to prison for it. That's where I'm out.
Unless you don't get caught.
Yeah, but you're gonna get caught.
You think there's like true like Ocean's 11 type people out there?
I don't know. It goes back to the thoughts of like a serial killer existing this day and age. I think there's too much technology. Like the odds of
Yeah,
getting caught.
that guy, who was the guy? I'm not really big in the like finance world, but who was the guy that's like locked up for like a crypto scheme or whatever?
Oh, that dude. I don't remember his name. The FTX dude, right?
Yes. Like, do you have any like actual understanding of like what that guy's like how that guy what he was doing?
He was doing. I don't remember exactly what it was. So I'm not the best person for that. But he was essentially just stealing money, just stealing huge money.
Straight up stealing money.
He was promising people like returns. It was almost like
Wonder if there's
I think it was like bad stock trading essentially, but crypto's not a stock.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with like he was taking crypto and like taking out
loans against it and
loans
for crypto that didn't exist,
or buying stocks against it or something. If Mark's watching the show, he's probably laughing.
Yeah, he's like, these idiots have no
how
idea
incompetent we are with regards to finance. FTX it was called, right?
Yeah, FTX.
FTX Scandal explained. Let's see.
Well, that's a funny story. So when the big like GameStop short happened, I had to reach out to Steve to have him explain to me what was going on with the stock market because I'm way too dumb to understand any of that.
I would never trust Steve to explain anything to me.
Well, he was in the finance and it made sense. And now there's a documentary on it and I can like watch it with a little bit of clarity as to what was going on. The one time I trusted him was when finance was involved.
Well, here's a video. Should we watch this video on the FTX thing and see what that's all about? It's 6 minutes. It's kind of long.
How many? 60 minutes?
Six.
Oh, it's like Jesus. I think this guy may fall into that sociopath category because we haven't gotten back to that.
I don't know. Like, do you know anything about this FTX guy?
He seemed like a young kid, and I think this was the self-gratification happening because I think there are two different levels of criminals at the very least, right? There's the people who just think they're smarter than everybody, and it's all just like, oh, I'm going to outsmart everybody. I'm going to get away with this, and I'm going to be the most genius criminal ever because I'm a genius, and I'm going to have all the money and power in the world because I'm just smarter than everybody, right? I think this dude might fall into that category, but I could be wrong.
There you go. There's a Wall Street Journal article entitled "How Sam Bankman-Fried's Psychiatrist Became a Key Player at the Crypto Exchange FTX. Hired as a coach, was there for its dramatic downfall."
Yeah, because I think that's the whole thing was he was just blatantly misrepresenting what he was doing. Like he was a scammer and a hustler.
Interesting.
Like I think that's the baseline of it.
Well, let's take a look here. Let me
it's either pull up the article or
I'm gonna pull it up in a second. I'm just getting an appropriate window here. All right, let's see. So apparently George Lerner was there for the downfall.
I like the graphic. There's always a graphic with like when it's a criminal, their face is always askew because they're wrongdoers. All right. Sorry.
You're good. Let's see. Sam Bankman-Fried told an FTX all-hands meeting about an addition to the company's staff. Wasn't head of accounting, wasn't a risk manager, so was a psychiatrist who would serve as coach for stressed-out employees at the fast-growing crypto exchange. Dr. George Lerner introduced himself and encouraged workers to consult with him. Okay. FTX collapsed in November, brought down by revelations it had misused billions of customer funds. Guy's now under house arrest, yada, 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 whatever. Late last month, new management asked a judge to approve subpoenas to obtain a broad assortment of internal communications, including those between SBF and Dr. Lerner as part of its effort to recover assets. A spokesman declined to comment on the subpoena request in an email.
I think it gets into like 2 paragraphs down. It might go into more of it. It's like the lines between the two companies, FTX and Alameda, were also indistinct. So he was creating a false second company.
FTX customers' funds as a piggy bank. 90% of Alameda.
So this reminds me of was it Bernie Madoff? That guy.
Yes.
I was watching a documentary on him too, because this finance world is crazy. But he
Yeah,
was
that dude's corrupt, man.
Yeah.
All these like finance people, they just
and this
love
guy,
money.
he essentially had a hedge fund that was paying like guaranteed dividends out, and he was fabricating everything. And he did it for like 20 years or something crazy like that.
I've got a great question for you that I brought up. I don't know, during some philosophical discussion I was having at some point with somebody. What do you think is like the bigger cause for downfall of man? Love of money or love of sex, basically? My philosophy is that at the end of the day, like the root of all evil is like basically sex, right? Because people are willing to pay. Well, then again, I guess people do it. It'll go either way, right? Some
I think it's
people will
money.
pay for sex. Some people will have sex for money. But
I think it's money. Because the inherent belief is that money brings power. And I think that's where a lot of people that are super money driven makes them feel way, way more powerful. And so I think the inherent evil is
those
money.
people are willing to pay for sex.
Yeah.
Whereas
they'll pay for anything.
Usually people,
they think they can buy anything, which I think is the
Gary
problem.
says love of money is worse, is the root of all things.
That's what I'm saying. I agree.
Do people kill for money?
Absolutely.
People will kill for sex. Look at Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, but I think they weren't necessarily doing it for just that reason. I think it played a part.
All right, so money. I don't know if this article is getting at what we were looking for.
I don't think so at all, but I think we got an idea.
Yeah,
like I think this guy was
looking.
misusing. I think he's misusing funds. I think this was self gratification. I think he's going to fall under that narcissistic. I don't even know what word to use. Diagnosis. I think this guy was more sociopath than he was career criminal. For the thrill of it.
So, how do you define sociopath? I mean, I have the scientific definition.
That's
the
one.
How do you define it?
I couldn't define it.
When you say sociopath, what's going through your head?
I think like a narcissist, somebody who's just, they live in their own world, right? Like they live in this world that they've created where they are the king of that world. Mm-hmm. And to them, like they're the end all be all, right? Like that's how I would look at it.
A sociopath. Yeah, like a narcissistic sociopath.
Yeah.
Then you've got, I mean, these guys that are like manipulating. What's your, can you clarify your question, Sherry? I don't fully understand what you're asking. But these guys that are like out there, like killing people, like mass manipulation schemes, those are typically like psychopaths.
Yeah.
Because they have like, and it's actually really interesting. I was watching a talk on basically what they call like the criminal brain, right? Mm-hmm. Is the title of this researcher's talk. Really what he's getting into is kind of like the known biology of psychopathy, which is basically is a very small subset of antisocial personality disorders, or like, antisocial personality disorders, right? So people are typically like very high anxiety. They have very like fluctuating emotions, like their emotional state gets disturbed very easily, very often like rooted in a history of like trauma in their life. Let's see, what else? They can be like very impulsive and, irrationally aggressive. And like within this broad category of antisocial personality disorders, you have this small subset of what we call psychopaths, psychopathy. And it's actually sort of opposite, right? Like they don't exhibit anxiety. They're very like even keeled, low anxiety, low. That's why like I mean, that whole story with like Jeffrey Dahmer on that one kid that he like drilled a hole in his head, and the kid like runs out of his apartment, and the cops pick him up, and the cops are talking to him.
And he's even keel, like, oh, this guy's just drunk.
Yeah, exactly. He's able to just like stay like level-headed and talk to the cops. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
even when he's talking to the psychologist, right? Like, he's very calm, like very calm. Like, he's not. Doesn't seem like he's rattled by getting caught, even. And that's wild. But you were talking about the biology of these people. So is there something like biologically different in their brain?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things I found very interesting in this talk, kind of going through the various biological mechanisms that lead to psychopathy, right? Now, obviously, when we're talking about kind of like the mind and the brain of people doing crime at large, right? We're talking, psychopathic crime is a small subset, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where I want to, if you want to give us a rundown of the biology of that, or what they found when they were talking about this, then let's get back to the crimes.
Well, we can go through like some of the biology of psychopathy specifically, and then we can kind of zoom back out, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
But basically there was three main things that they were pretty much kind of like boiled it all down to. One is like a disruption of the mirror neuron system. The other is a disruption of the amygdala. Basically, like they have smaller amygdalas, and I'll go through what each of these mean.
I was gonna say, you're gonna have to break down all of that.
Yeah, I'll break down each of them in a second. The third is in like, I forget what the official name. I think it's like a mentation process. It's basically like your ability to run artificial scenarios in your head.
Okay.
Right. So one of the things, so when you're talking about like mirror neurons, these are the things that allow you to basically like experience empathy, like the emotions of another person. So there's like the ability to actually like experience another person's emotions, and there's another that's like your ability to infer like
how they're feeling in a situation.
Yeah. And then you have kind of like so mirror neurons are kind of more like facilitate your ability to like really feel what someone else is feeling. I think like a classic example of that is like if a baby's crying, another baby will start crying, right? It's sort of, even though it's not a socially trained behavior, but they have it biologically encoded into them to sort of empathize. When one's crying, the other one starts crying. Then the other concept, let me see if I think it's called mentation process. Let me see here.
Didn't you say like they got tiny amygdalas?
Well, tiny amygdalas is like the third one. I'm trying to see what's I'm trying to find this one slide where I thought it summarized things really nicely in this talk that I was looking through. But I think it's the process of... No. Give me just a second here. I'm getting close.
I believe in you. Well, the first one does make sense, right? When you're thinking of people that are lacking empathy or the ability to pick up on somebody else's emotions and be able to compartmentalize that. Like, I think that
I found it. Yeah, the cognitive empathy network. So basically the ability to, so like your mirror neuron system is like your crude rudimentary empathy, your ability to like, one baby cries, the other baby starts crying. Then you have your like a more sophisticated network that they call a cognitive empathy network, which basically takes the baseline of your ability to empathize and then basically run scenarios in your head of like how someone's feeling, how they're going to react, how do they want you to react, and actually build like social constructs.
I was gonna say that links into what we talked about with the social brain network, right? Like
Yeah, similar, right?
similar to that, where it's you know what they're feeling, you should know what's socially acceptable, or be able to put yourself in their shoes and understand what they're feeling.
Yeah, exactly. It's
in
putting yourself in
normal
someone else's
terms.
shoes.
Yeah.
So I guess that, and then before we come back to the amygdala, the actual, where's the final piece of the puzzle here I'm looking for? This here. Yeah. So basically, within this network, you have a couple different components, and it's the ventral medial prefrontal cortex. I am cheating. I'm looking at notes. I don't have all these like fancy terms just rattling off the top.
Just ready to go.
Yeah. I'm a brain guy. I'm not really a sophisticated scientist who just like knows all this like social stuff off the top of my head. So the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, which is basically, so the simplest way to describe that would be like if you slice my brain down this way, you kind of looked, I guess, like on the inside, like kind of looked at my brain like as if you're going that way, right? You slice my head this way, you're looking at my brain that way, kind of like in the front, like back here, like kind of maybe back there a little bit, maybe a little high. I might be a little lower, but right. I'm kind of I'm trying to do this into a computer screen, but you get the
fun to watch. Yeah.
Anyway, so basically, there's a part that control, like when they communicate with each other, it allows you to basically infer the emotions of someone else. It allows you to run scenarios in your head, like if this person behaves this way and I behave this way, what's the likely response that these people are going to have? In like, you know how we do this very subconsciously, right? Like you get a weird work call and you can, like, maybe your instinct is to be like, you're an idiot, and hang up the phone, right? But there's that part of you that's like, well, while yes, I think he's an idiot, I know, because the person I'm talking to doesn't take harsh feedback well, that if I scream at them on the phone, that they're going to quit their job. And I don't want them to quit their job. So even though I want to yell at them and they deserve to be yelled at because they did a terrible job, I'm going to bite my tongue and I'm not going to yell at them, because ultimately if they quit their job, that's worse off for me. Right. That's a huge sophisticated scenario I just built in my head. But like, how fast can your brain whip that up when you're on the phone with someone? I mean, literally lightning fast. Your brain can run that scenario, determine it doesn't necessarily like the outcome of the scenario, and basically change course. Now, in the mind of a psychopath, they basically have the ability to see the emotions of another person, right? They have that insight to see the emotions of another person. They can run the physical scenarios to project the outcomes that they want, but they don't have the ability to run the scenarios and have an emotional connection to how it impacts other people in their scenario.
Like they can't put themselves in other people's shoes.
Exactly.
Or play out like a scenario from a different standpoint other than their own.
Basically. So they end up running these scenarios. They've come up with a scenario that results in the thing that they want. And they're basically like a robot with respect to how it impacts anyone else in their scenario. Right? They can, but they're still capable of seeing and interpreting the emotions of the other person, because that's how they manipulate them. So in many ways,
right, because that's what they want to do. They want to, well, I don't want to generalize, but the end goal is typically to manipulate them to get what they want, right? Or run the scenario out to the best of their ability to get their gratification. It's self-serving, and they can't empathize with how that person feels in the scenario. They want to get what they want to get.
Yes. It's sort of like they can, like if there were a true robot, right? I mean, we'll just take a serial killer example, because that's what we've talked about plenty. And Sherry says a lot of this comes down to development in early childhood. Yes. From the antisocial personality category, yes, but actually the psychopathy subset is very heavily genetic. So it's almost one of those things where you're like, okay, it sort of starkly contrasts in terms of clinical presentation, high anxiety versus low anxiety. And then you've got one that's highly environmentally influenced with early childhood development and one that's highly genetic. So, like, why are they lumped together? I don't know the answer to that question, but something.
Brain stuff,
yeah,
easily lumped together.
So, like but anyway, going back to like my original point, if they were like a true robot, right, and they just wanted to like, rape and kill someone, they would just be like, "I am the robot."
Mm-hmm.
Rape and kill, right? Like there would be nothing, right? That's not how a psychopath operates, right? They sort of operate like that in a sense, but they manipulate everyone around them. So they'll be very charming, right? When they run into someone and they'll connect with them, but they're not connecting with them with any perspective of the well-being of the individual. They can they can infer the emotion of the other individual, and they can manipulate the emotions of the individual. So in some ways, like, they kind of have that mirror, like they have like mirror neuron function, right? Mm-hmm. They have the ability to like read the emotions of the people that they're with, right? They're not like totally.
They're essentially a human chameleon.
Yeah, but then when they,
kind of. Well, from their standpoint,
like, in many ways, like all humans are chameleons in that regard, right? We have the ability to take on the emotions of people around us. Except, although there is a contrast in the sense of like, actually, kind of interesting how they do contrast like autism spectrum disorder with psychopathy. Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting, right? So psychopath, they retain that chameleon-esque ability to like read and respond to the emotions of the people around them. But when they run the scenarios, they're incapable of running a scenario that maybe favors an outcome that favors you over an outcome that favors me. Mm-hmm. Right? So they can say, oh, in this scenario, this person's going to respond emotionally this way. So, but in order for me to meet my end goal of whatever raping and killing or whatever maladaptive behavior they're going after, they say, well, if I'm too mean to that person, or if I'm too rough, or if I'm too aggressive or forthcoming, I might scare them away. So they have enough emotional connection to be able to understand that and not do that.
Okay.
But when it comes to the ultimate scenario, because you'd say like, oh, if they can emotionally connect and manipulate, why wouldn't they then run the scenario that goes, oh, well, the end goal of this scenario is this person ends up dead, and that's not good for them. So maybe I shouldn't do that, because even though I don't get what I want, that would be, the harm to them outweighs what I want.
They're missing that piece.
Yeah. And I think that actually kind of speaks a lot to some of the stories of, Jeffrey Dahmer, where he would like, right, what did he want? He wanted people to not leave him.
Yeah, and he knew it was wrong. Like, I think that's compelling in terms of that, because he knew it was wrong. This is one of the things we talked about. One of the things that stood out in the documentary is he never tried to cover up what he was doing, and he admitted he knew it was wrong. He tried to get help for it, and he essentially couldn't. So I think that does speak volumes to that aspect.
Yeah, and he would, he kept saying like he didn't want to kill them. Mm-hmm. He wanted them to not leave.
Yeah.
But he couldn't craft a scenario in which someone could leave and him get a lot out of the interaction, but avoid someone not leaving him. Yeah. And this was like basically like the default scenario, or I guess like the only scenario he could drum up in his head where he could get as much what he wanted, or as close to what he wanted, right? What did he want? He wanted a will-less individual that would never leave him and do whatever he tells them to do.
Yeah.
He wanted a human zombie slave, right?
Yeah. Essentially.
Right? Like it's crazy. I mean, I think after all this stuff I've read on Gallagher's work that we talked about, was that last week or?
That was last week, yeah.
Feels like ages ago. I'm still not convinced there isn't, extraterrestrial forces at play with these true psychopaths.
I'm just saying, I wouldn't rule it out for everybody either. I stand firm on that too.
Yeah, there's things out there we just can't explain, and I'm okay with it in some sense. I think I don't want to live in a world where all you see is what you get.
Yeah. There's always got to be that extra layer, I guess, of some kind, the unexplained, the supernatural.
But so I mean that's kind of what I've learned.
What was the tiny amygdala one?
Oh yeah, we never talked about the amygdala. So the amygdala, I thought the guy who gave this talk that I listened to, it was about a 90-minute talk.
Let's give him a shout out. No free shout outs.
Professor at OHSU, Oregon Health something University, Health Sciences probably. It's basically a major Portland healthcare system. So it's a big state college professor, neuroscientist. Actually, the talk may have been hosted by OHSU. The speaker may have been from like UCSF or something like that, San Francisco. But I thought he gave a great explanation of the amygdala, and he actually showed an awesome graphic. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I'm like skimming through his slides. I'm just stealing off of him. Was a pretty awesome. It's got to be right here. There we go. I don't even have to play it. Just look at this.
Oh, wow.
So this is a map of the connections of different areas of the brain. And right here is the amygdala. So it's a deep brain structure that basically has like more connections to all the other parts of the brain than like any other part of the brain.
Yeah, everything's almost like routing through that if it's like it's centrally located.
Exactly. And so it's basically a hub of information processing, right? A lot of emotional, sensational information goes through there. Like information from all your organs feed back to the amygdala.
So I feel like we talked about the amygdala and it being smaller in something. One of the topics we covered, I feel like this has come up before now that we're describing it. Maybe it was the social brain network and maybe the cognitive functioning.
Maybe. Pediatric head trauma, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Did we talk about that?
No, well, not pediatric head trauma, but possibly like something getting damaged in childhood that could lead to possible criminal behavior. Like I feel like that we may have talked about it with the one story where the guy went to jail, had TBIs, and you theorized like maybe like a smaller amygdala. Because I'd asked if there was anything like from the biology of the brain that could be different. I think this is where you may have mentioned.
Yeah. So basically, all this stuff routes through the amygdala. And it's kind of the amygdala's job to like wake up other areas of the brain and be like, hey, this sensory input's coming in. We need to respond to it. And in psychopaths, it's basically they have smaller amygdalas, and it's
just like we're gonna ignore that one. Carry on with whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah. So and that's the thought of why they have this overall like kind of a blunted response to a lot of things. Like when you take a guy like Dahmer and you're like, you just killed 19 people. Like, how do you feel about it? Oh, well, it's not a good thing that I did. Like, he knows it's not a good thing, but he's just kind of like, oh,
Even Sherry put in the chat, comes across as a lack of conscience, right? Like, yeah they seem soulless, right? because the response isn't what you would
Yeah.
deem a normal response to something like that.
So then here's a great question for you, Josh. Mull this one over and let me know what you think.
All right.
As we really gain more of a biological understanding of psychopathy and can show that there's biological and genetic correlates leading to biological deficits causing psychopathy, should psychopaths be responsible for their crimes, or should they be considered, basically be able to like plead insanity? Because currently psychopaths cannot plead insanity. A diagnosis of psychopathy does not.
You can't do an insanity plea?
Well, no, a diagnosis of psychopathy does not qualify for the definition of legal insanity.
That's a tough one.
But if you can substantiate it biologically and say this is a biological physical disease state, does that change that story for you in your mind?
I think it would be helpful to biologically find out if somebody falls under that category, right? You scan them, hit them with a microchip, boop, psychopath.
A microchip?
Whatever it works.
An Elon Musk microchip in them?
Put a microchip in everybody, scan all of them. Let's find out what's going on, track them all.
I've got.
And whatever you can do, put them through a machine, scan them. I assume you pick the person up and you run them over like a human self-checkout, and like it beeps and gives like a red light, green light scenario. Let's do that. Red light,
green light. I have to find this video.
Somebody get that technology cranked up for psychopaths or whatever we want to do. And then we do that. And I think that's going to help us have an understanding of if they're full of it or if there is something biologically wrong with this person. And then it comes down to the factor is, are they a danger to themselves or other people?
I mean, they're definitely a danger to other people, right? That's the point. You're not going to change that. So
yeah, I think
you can't just like cut these people loose to be on the streets.
And I think that's the important.
Go ahead. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Well, and like insanity or not, this is going to sound really cold. Does it matter where we stick them? Like keep them away from people.
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, do you stick them in jail? Do you stick them in a mental health institute? Or do you...
That raises a whole bunch of other questions.
Murder them, execute them for the goodness, for the greater good of society?
I am never going to opt with execute them. That's just me. Like I can never say in my conscience that we should execute another human being. That's just the way I fundamentally operate. I understand.
How do you feel about executing Horde?
Well, if they're dirty scum horde, like sometimes they need to be executed, but they respawn and it's fine. So
I guess that's why you've taken up the dark arts of the discipline priest, because you're not a killer.
Nope.
So hold on, I gotta pull up this video.
Find that. And after that, I think we should explore this under the guise of sociopaths and break down the clinical definition of a sociopath for us. We'll unpack that and criminal activity more. And this video better be somebody getting scanned. No, and then it's spitting out a red light, green light if they're a psychopath or not.
I was gonna say, when I saw this video, my eyes literally just went.
Okay.
Let's pull this up here.
I'm very excited for this. I want to see.
I think this is what a Chrome tab.
Oh geez.
I think this should get the audio right here. I'm going to turn my...
Trident.
For good.
Many accredit it to being originated from the Vajra. And did you see Elon Musk's bedside table picture that he put on Twitter? He had that in the lower left corner of the picture. That is the symbol that comes from ancient Hindu that is supposed to be the most powerful thing in the entire universe. This is a staged photo. So the fact that he has that Vajra in the lower left corner, I wonder, is he essentially sending a shot off the bow to the people who he thinks are going after him, which is that I have knowledge of something. There's all this speculation that there has been a limitless energy device that has come from the ancients that has been essentially redeveloped. And then in a short period of time, you have Elon Musk posting this picture while he's also talking about that he believes that his life could be at jeopardy. Why would he put that Vajra right in the lower left corner? The symbol that means that other people can correlate with a limitless free energy technology that may have once existed, and that's where the trident comes from. If you want to talk about ancient technologies,
and let's discuss.
Yeah, I remember when he posted that picture. I never remember that coming of it, but I remember he clearly staged this photo. There's like whatever he did, there was another nod to something else. He's just got this giant revolver and a bunch of was it beer cans or Coke cans or whatever.
Diet Coke, I think it was.
Something like that. Either way, this confirms at least one thing. Elon Musk is 100% alien, and you cannot change my mind. That dude is not from this planet. And you'll never convince me otherwise. Like the stuff the dude has figured out how to do, like not a human being.
Is Bill Gates from this planet?
Yeah, that's 50-50 on that one, because that dude's he's different. And I think we talked about this briefly. That man's acquired enough land on this country to just own this country. And it's alarming. Bill Gates is something else too, and I don't trust that man. Sorry, Microsoft.
So what about the New World Order? What do we think about that?
Listen, I didn't listen to the one podcast you sent me, but there's some type of Illuminati something going on. I can tell you that much.
I mean, these like global,
and there's a good chance that what the Illuminati is, this New World Order, is a bunch of shape-shifting lizard people that live in the center of the earth because it's hollow.
Okay, so why are they all at war? Well, not war, but why is Elon Musk the great opposer? Is it staged, like they're all working together, but they need to make it seem like they're on different sides of the aisle, and Elon Musk is just like the elected defector?
No, man. So he is the alien. He's the one from a different planet, not from here. So he's at war with them. And that's why they're going to gang up and be like, yo.
So you think it's genuine?
Yep. So this guy's not a shape-shifting lizard person. And we know that because we're shape-shifting lizard people. But that dude's not from this planet either.
I am not a shape-shifting lizard.
Because we've scanned
be whoever you want to be.
We've scanned enough of
not putting myself in that box.
We've scanned enough of these people to understand that he's not one of them either. And they're like, listen, we saw that trident thing. We knew it was here. Didn't pick up on what it could do. But this alien guy picked up the trident, understands that he can make batteries. Boom, Tesla and Starlink. What up? Science, man. I feel
like there's a lot of holes in your...
That is sound. That is a sound
theology,
philosophy. You can take it as fact.
Okay.
Don't take it as fact. Please don't. No one take that as fact.
Pizzagate's old news. The New World Order. That's what we should all be talking about. These people
New World
are
Order.
Crazy.
Hey, I think that's one thing that we can take away from this conversation is I think everyone's crazy. It's just a varying degree of how crazy are you. And
no, but I mean, all these people like at the top of the world food chain, there's something wrong with these people.
Oh yeah.
Like socially wrong with these people.
Possibly psychologically.
I think wealth is the wealth associated with it is kind of just like a byproduct.
I think
it's like, well, we say maladaptive. I mean, socially maladaptive for society, but obviously adaptive for their own advancement.
Yeah, and I think money plays a part.
There's no way these people are just driven by money.
No, I don't think it is, but I do think the money plays a factor and eventually puts them into a bracket where they just can't relate with other humans at some point, right? Like, I do think that plays a part.
Supposedly, I don't know how long ago this was, but I heard on like a podcast or something. Supposedly there was like a meeting between like Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, and like a few other people, and like the topic of the meeting, as like somebody found like inscribed on like a printed invitation to the meeting, was like to discuss the future means to which we can reduce the global population or something like that.
Yeah, that checks out. Then all of a sudden COVID hit. And I'm just saying, it's probably Oprah, Bill Gates, I assume the Kardashians. Elon was probably there. And if I had to take another stab at one other person,
Germany, Charles Schwab or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That guy is probably the least talked about, like, global world order pioneer of like anyone. Who's that guy that was like connected to Jeffrey Epstein that nobody talks about?
Wasn't it I forget who it was, his buddy or confidant, something. I don't know. I don't follow politics or news at all for that matter.
I follow conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I like the wild ones, like the
or should I just say conspiracies?
Yeah,
we don't know if they're theories or fact.
It's true. It's true. We'll never know, or will we?
I don't know. One day we will know the truth, my friend. These people definitely, there's stuff wrong in their brains. That is 100%.
Who's going to be the one to cut them open and find out? Is it going to be you?
I mean, I don't even know if you cut them open, you'd find out. You need to do like
or here's the other, like, do you think you cut them open and it's like a Men in Black situation where it's like a little bug dude operating a robot? Like, that makes sense to me for Elon Musk. To be honest.
I mean, I'd be very scared to open that up. And then what, it bites me in the neck and then I become like
it jumps out.
By...
Yeah. Comes at you.
Does that mean like the true hero of the universe is going to be like a Will Smith type?
Yeah, probably. Tommy Lee Jones.
I can buy into that.
Makes sense to me. And back onto the brain things, sociopaths. Break down a sociopath compared to a psychopath.
A sociopath versus a psychopath.
Or we'll just break down we covered what a psychopath is.
So a sociopath is generally someone who is, so like a psychopath, they have no real motivation to get ahead in life. Mm-hmm. Like socially, they don't have any motivation to get ahead in life. They have their driving force, their craving, their appetite, whatever their thing is that they need to satisfy or that they want, right? They're out, like the outcomes that they want are like sex, murder, whatever, and they'll do whatever they need to do, and they're very manipulative, and they can lie, and they can cheat, and they can scheme to achieve that end. Sociopath, they kind of care about the social ladder and their social standing.
It's power driven, right?
And they will do whatever they need to do to work within this. So psychopaths, they will manipulate to basically work outside, like do things, conduct behaviors that don't fit within social constructs. Sociopaths, they're not really, they're driven to rise to the highest orders of the social constructs. And they'll do whatever they need to do, even if morally questionable, in order to do that. Like, would they be willing to kill someone to
climb the
achieve their social endpoint? Yes. Does that mean they have a desire to kill like a psychopath? No. But apparently another interesting thing I read is that apparently they're very nepotistic. Like that's a key trait, right? Like they want
that's what I
their
think of when you say
offspring-
sociopath. I assume like
Yeah, they want their offspring to basically like be in positions of power around them because they want their genetic heritage.
it's carrying on that lineage. It's self-serving. They're like, no, this name is going to be something, and I'm going to make it something, and you're going to make sure it stays that way.
Yeah.
And
it's very much geared towards for the good of them, not for the good of society.
Right.
In the sense, like they're so very socially aware, but they're not socially they don't care socially, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like the reason that they don't do socially maladaptive things is because it doesn't serve their end to rise through the social construct, right? They'll become ostracized. They'll become outcast from society. That doesn't help serve their end point. They have no desire to actually do anything socially adaptive.
Well, so and I don't know if you read anything around this, but would the biology of their brain, do you think it would be similar to that of a psychopath, or do you think it would be different, or maybe some things the same? Like, do you think there's a biological?
I don't know. I didn't read too much about it, but
what would you assume? Like knowing what you know.
I mean, in terms of their mirror neuron system, their empathy, probably there. I'm assuming, right? They have to be very keen, cunning, manipulative. In terms of their, ability to run scenarios, I think they I was kind of saying like, you can run a scenario and choose a scenario that's more beneficial for another person and is like the least bad option for you. Whereas like the psychopath kind of runs a scenario and they want the option that is best for them.
Right.
Period. Right.
Well, that's where I could see
that's kind of, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say I could see the sociopath being able to, like, I could see their brain mirroring that of a psychopath, but I bet they're just lacking the empathy, like the ability to have empathy for another person. Because I can even see them being able to do empathy. Right. I think they do. I don't think they care.
They have empathy in the sense that they can read, interpret, and understand the emotions of other people. I think they lack the ability to actually care, like you said.
Yeah.
Right. So when they're running scenarios,
that's why I think they have the one half of it where they can clearly, like, they know what that person's feeling. They just do not care. Right. Like, and I think that's the portion that's missing.
But they also, one thing that I think contrasts the like narcissistic sociopath, I think is what they were referring to it as, the narcissistic sociopath compared to like a true psychopath. Let me see if I still have this article handy. I might not, but that's okay. Yeah, I don't have it handy. The one thing they contrasted is, the psychopath, like, they want their end goal, like they want it now. There's no long
game. It's just instant. It's instant gratification onto the next one. Instant gratification onto the next one.
The sociopath, they'll play the long game, right? And that's why they're socially cunning, right? They will be your friend. They will, string you along. Right, until basically the benefit to keeping you there fails to be present, in which case their behavior is probably going to become much more maladaptive towards you. And so, probably honestly, a lot of these people in like positions of power are probably sociopaths,
or at least like on that cusp at the very least.
Spectrum. Yeah, I'm sure nothing's concrete, nothing's binary in biology. Let's be honest, other than gender, I guess. If you, even that's up for debate these days. We're not getting into that.
I'm not touching that.
Okay. Oh, let me
At
take it
all.
back. Biological sex is binary. Social gender, binary. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's
Not
just
touching that one.
I'm a biologist. I cannot stand here on the internet and go against everything I know would be true of biology. I'm not doing it. I don't care if everybody unsubscribes. I got morals. I got values. Can't do it.
With that being said,
I'm not dancing around the issue.
let's go back to our original topic: is criminals. I think there's two sets at the very least. I think you've got the ones that have that. Again, I'm gonna call it the wild card factor, right? It's in their genes to be thrill seeking, and I think they maybe had an upbringing that laws didn't necessarily matter, and led to a life of crime.
Yeah,
or I think you've got the people that are.
I think it's a totally different category in terms of like the mind of crime.
Yeah, and I'm using that. I'm not saying they're necessarily one and the same, but I'm saying they've got something similar to that. They're the one who, when you're a Viking, you need the guy who's going to be crazy enough to, let's break in there, let's go kill whoever we need to kill. We're going to get all of their gold, and we're going to hop back on our ship and ride back.
I think mankind was just generally more psychopathic back then.
Yeah,
but I think also it comes from that may come more from a place of survival.
But that's exactly what it is. Survival. You've got the guy who's going to make sure you survive at all costs necessary, right? So I think there's people that have that built in to this day. They're like, I'm going to survive, and I want to. Again, I'm going to do it at all costs, and I'm going to rock and roll and make sure I survive the way I want to survive. And that's crime. Like I'm a criminal. I have a certain set of skills, and I'm going to use them, and I'm good at it.
That would be actually a great video game. Imagine like
it's called Grand Theft Auto.
Imagine like an MMO where instead of like your traditional classes that you select a psychological profile. So you have like the psychopath, the survivalist,
the logical thinker,
like the the rational thinker.
Hey guys, let's not go to jail. All right.
Yeah.
Let's not kill anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just keep a cool hat.
That'd be an interesting video game to play.
But I think there's that line, and then I think there's the people who are maybe more of a sociopath, is they want to climb to the top, the very top, and they're going to do it at all costs, whether they have to finagle the rules in their favor, perceived rules, or they're going to break some rules to do it and try their best not to get caught.
I think my feelings are that the kind of thrill seeker tends to be more of the younger, like that tends to be more associated, probably, if I had to guess, younger age. And as the frontal lobe develops and the ability to project consequences onto your actions, you start to shift away from thrill-seeking behavior.
But there's some people that just don't. So is that a brain injury? Is it a product of circumstance?
I mean, you can have brain injuries that lead to that kind of thing. Yeah,
but you look at career criminals where it's like, they're like, oh, we robbed banks, we stole cars, we went to jail, we came out, we're doing it again.
You mean like the guy, like mob bosses and stuff?
Yeah, you think of it like.
I think that almost becomes like they're in so deep that they're like, this is just my identity.
Okay, and that makes sense too.
But the thing that got them into it, I think the thing that got them into it was probably thrill seeking. It was community
and where they grew up, I'd assume. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think a lot of it is pack mentality.
Yeah, well. I guess when you start looking at like organized crime bosses, drug cartels, mafia, that kind of stuff, maybe there's like a couple people that have like narcissistic tendencies because they've just been, so power drunk for so long that they feel invincible.
Yeah,
but I don't think
the average
typically is.
I don't think that's the. What do they call it? Like the fall guy. I don't think the fall guy is that. I think the fall guy is the thrill seeker who wanted to be a part of something or grew up in that neighborhood.
Maybe. But then I think actually when you get, if I had to guess, a lot of the guys that have like led to their crime family's demise, right? The guys that slip up, the ones that, well, now the FBI finally nailed the crime family because of, this person in charge when that happened. If I had to guess, is probably somebody who is more of a sociopath.
Yeah.
Because they manipulated their way into power, and something that was like very probably like well established, right? A watertight operation. They start like the sociopath starts to feel like they have it all under control instead of being like very procedural and dot the I's, cross the T's. Like they take it on as if like I am invincible.
They know best. They figured it out. They beat the system. They beat the game.
They
they're
rose
winning
to the top because they're just
fundamentally
the best,
smarter.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas then you get the, this is like comic book stuff. This is movie material, right? Why do you have the contrast, right? You've got the old crime boss, head of the family who built it from the ground up, right? And he's logical and he's clear thinking, and you take risks, calculated risks. And then you get the nepotistic guy rises through the ranks or manipulates his way into power. Perfect examples. Gladiator, right? Who's the son that takes? What's the son's name in Gladiator? That played by Joaquin Phoenix. I forget his name.
Man, I don't remember.
Commodus. Commodus takes over when his father, Marcus Aurelius, dies. Right? Marcus Aurelius built the kingdom. Sound judgment and, authority. And, then Commodus kind of socially weasels his way in because he's a sociopath. But he's the one who he thinks almost so highly of himself that he abandons all the protocols and the things that established the authority of their monarchy. And what ends up happening? Maximus, husband to a murdered wife, father to a murdered son, had his vengeance in this life or the next. What a great movie.
Was it like, are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained?
Oh, I'm never going to forget that one. You brought up an interesting point about organized crime and like it essentially being the guy who gets caught is the narcissist type guy. And I don't disagree. And I think we've definitely seen a decline in large organized crime organizations.
I think they just lay low now.
And then, well, that's what I was going to ask is like, I think they're definitely either less prevalent or they're just much more well hidden nowadays. But then what do you think the motivations are for something like a drug cartel?
Well, that's the thing.
Do you think that's narcissistic? You think that's power? You think it's a product of circumstance?
I mean, everything seems like, 70s, 80s, like that kind of stuff was all just so renegade.
I mean, well, it still is. You'd see like every few years, it seems like is you can't really go to certain areas of Mexico because they're just taking people and killing them for whatever the reason is. Just as a,
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of, Jerry says because of technology, they're more underground. Yeah, I mean, I think they are more sophisticated.
Okay.
It's all, all the drug business in Mexico, I think it's just massively more sophisticated, or not even Mexico, South America, Central America. I think it's all just massively more.
But what do you think their motivation? What do you think their motivations are from like those lords?
I genuinely think it's just business.
Okay.
I think this is totally like speculation, right? I have nothing to base this on. My opinion.
Dr. Rad is in ties with the drug cartel. Got it.
Actually, that's true. That is very true. I make a lot of money from them. Pfizer is my primary.
Pfizer.
I'm just kidding. So I get the sense, right? Back in like the 70s, the 80s, things were more analog. You know, you didn't have this digital world, right? You didn't have as much communication, direct communication. You know, you didn't have burner phones, right? People were doing like in-person meets for everything. There was a lot of emotion wrapped up in everything everyone did, right? It was renegade. It was the Wild West of like drug dealing, you know? And now it's just become the type of thing with like technology, communication, collaborations at its highest it's ever really been, at least in the modern, postmodern world that we know. I mean, who knows if there was prior civilizations? That's a whole other conspiracy we can get into on another show.
We'll talk to Elon about it.
You know, I think there's some awesome theories to talk about that stuff, but right. There's so many documentaries and things made up of like drug crime, and it seems like guys out there, like these big cartel bosses today, it's just business, man.
But why not? Why not do it under the law? Why continue to operate outside of the law? Is it just they're in too deep and they can't flip it back? Like too many people to fall back on?
Money.
Too lucrative money wise?
It's just money. Yeah.
But then, I mean, again, so the mind of that criminal, right? Are they solely just that money motivated and the lifestyle they become accustomed to? I think my point here is like, I think there's a lot of driving factors.
I don't know.
And I would love to have a study of like different types of criminals.
Well,
and
yeah,
their brains, and like
I
scan their
think
brains.
there's a lot of stuff we'll never understand.
Never get.
There's things that there's involvement the government has with cartels that we'll never understand.
Yeah.
Never.
And I'm not even speaking from that. I'm like, you've got, so when you're talking cartels, you're talking gangs, you're talking like just solo criminals that are robbing banks, liquor stores, whatever the case may be, to survive, jewelry stores. I don't even know what other crimes are there.
Other than stealing,
financial crimes, you know, people that live under
crimes, white collar
crimes, like murder, you know.
Have you watched this Netflix series Ozark?
Oh yeah.
I've only seen maybe the first season.
That show's great. I love that show.
That show's fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are at the hour.
Yeah. Final thoughts on this?
Make some announcements and wrap up some final thoughts. But if you want to support veterans, our veteran programs kick off next Friday. Our community service programs start this Friday for patients and families of patients with brain and spine injuries and illnesses. Our veteran specific groups start the following Friday. So if you want to support any of our community service, that's why we do this live stream, to promote awareness for brain and spine injury and illness. That's why we always talk about fun and interesting brain and spine topics, right? We're not out here trying to cure cancer. We're just out here trying to have fun, talk about all the interesting stuff about the brain, the spine, related biology. Obviously, the nonprofit organization, Brain and Spine Group, that hosts this show, does a whole lot more other than just community service. They have research and education initiatives as well. At the end of the day, we're all committed to just improving brain and spine health. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. But we need the support of the community. If you want to support us, you can scan the QR code above. You can join our community on YouTube. You can donate on our website. There's tons of options. So please, if you have the ability or willingness to support us, we hope that you do. In terms of next week, we are actually don't even know what's on the schedule for next week. We kind of switched gears, right? We've been doing a lot of more like psychology, brain, what makes people do this, do that type of stuff. A lot of crime, true crime topics. We're kind of switching gears next week, going back to more of basic biology of the brain. We're going to be talking about sleep and what happens biologically in the brain during sleep. It's actually a very interesting phenomenon that's phase of sleep in which people typically sleepwalk is characterized by muscle paralysis. And so that's a little bit of a puzzling factor. If you're otherwise in a normal state of sleep, paralyzed during this sleep stage, why would people then get up and start walking around their house? So we're going to be talking about the biology of sleep, sleepwalking, what we know about it. So join us next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. for that discussion. It'll be a fun one. Come with questions, come with stories. We want to hear from you all.
I got a couple.
Yeah, it should be a good week. Sherry, thanks for joining us tonight. It's been a blast. So let's see. Final thoughts on Criminal Minds before we put the topic to rest for at least a couple weeks before another topic comes up.
I think there's at least a couple common psychological profiles for people that would be deemed criminals or conducting criminal activity. And that I think you could probably lump a bulk of people into. What those are, I don't know. I would love to find out more for sure as we study the brain.
You definitely have to split those two, I think, into like environmental or genetic.
Well, I think you need a little bit of both for like somebody who's let's call it a repeat offender, right? Like I think there's some genetic predispositions, especially after that clip you sent me. I think some people are wired a little different. Like we all know that one person's got a little bit of a screw loose. They may not be a criminal, but they could have been. I think that
maybe
that
it's
exists
the constructs of society that keep them from becoming a criminal.
And that's why I think there's a lot of factors, but I bet there's a couple common psychological profiles, if I had to guess.
Yeah. Well,
don't commit crimes.
Yeah.
Only you can stop forest crimes.
It's been fun diving into these psychological profiles of murderers and crime committers. You know, not something I think I'd want to make my research career on personally, but it's interesting to learn from other people's research on the topic.
It's fascinating stuff. And I am also excited to get back to more biology-based things with sleep, because that's also fascinating. And the more we can all learn, I think.
Brain is a fascinating thing. As I say, it is the one organ system that makes you who you are. Mm-hmm. Everyone's heart basically pumps the same. Everyone's kidneys pretty much all do the same thing. Everyone's brain's different, and you wouldn't be who you are without it. So that's why I find it fascinating.
That's why we got to get some help for it. We got to get support for it.
Tell us why you are fascinated by the brain, the spine, the central nervous system. Join us next week to continue the conversation. If you have suggestions for topics, we do kind of keep a running list of all of our tentative show topics. But if you have a suggestion or a desired topic, we can always adjust the schedule and slot it in within the next week or two. We usually do a pretty quick turnaround on show topic suggestions. So if you have an idea for a show, if you have a guest suggestion, let us know.
Or if you personally know a good guest that you want to get us in contact with, we're open to it. Right.
So on that, we hope everyone has a good night. Don't forget to support the stream by hitting the like and subscribe button at the very minimum. But if you want to do more, you can always join our YouTube community or donate on the website. Thanks, everyone. And Rad